The day the house started inhaling, no one noticed. I moved back after my mother's keys were found inside a wall. The realtor said character. The house said nothing. My sister swore our town skips noon. Clocks hit 11:59, then jumped to 1, she said. I slept on the floor to learn the house's noises. Pipes spoke like someone practicing my name. At 2:17, a hallway light turned on by itself. 4 notes waited in 4 rooms in my mother's hand. Each said, "Don't answer the door if it sounds like me." The door camera filmed me on the sidewalk while I stood inside. A voicemail from me said, "You forgot to lock the back door. We do not have a back door." I found one in the kitchen anyway. The yard behind it does not exist on any map. 3 sets of my footprints approached and reconsidered. The neighbor said I had moved in twice and that the 3rd time was strange. The baby monitor whispered, "Not yet. He's almost here." My sister asked if I smelled pennies and sent a photo of the square empty at noon. Flags froze mid-flutter with no wind. Every clock in the house agreed to disagree. The microwave stayed at 11:59 while the oven jumped to 1 when I blinked. I pressed my ear to the wall where the keys were found. The house inhaled and never exhaled. I waited an hour for breath that did not return. The hallway light showed a shadow wearing my cap, and I do not own a cap. The shadow rearranged into my mother's profile and then became wall. A letter slid through the slot in my mother's hand. "If he asks for a glass of water, he isn't thirsty," it read. "Stop letting him rehearse your mouth," it added in lighter ink. An attic chimney stopped 1 foot short of the roof. Inside it sat a box with my name spelled the tired way. A cassette labeled Wednesday waited beside a ring of unfamiliar keys. On the tape, my voice read groceries, then whispered, "We keep failing to be first." When I flipped it, my mother sang my name to keep someone calm. 2 knocks arrived and agreed to be ordinary. I did not answer because some answers become habits. Through the peephole, my eye decided not to blink. "I forgot my jacket," my voice said from the porch. A receipt for a coat from 1998 lay folded in the box. The thrift store closed before I could return anything. I lined up 12 keys and named them wrong on purpose. The 3rd key fit a door we do not have. The paint split and opened onto a quieter copy of my kitchen. The clock in there held 12:04 with confidence. A dry glass stood sweating with memory alone. A list on the mirror fridge said, "Do not look up. Do not answer my knock. Do not follow the siren." I looked up. The ceiling was a map labeling our street "You" and the next one "Not you yet." A shadow crossed the map where my house would be if the map were true. The door camera in my pocket showed me sleeping on the porch. In the living room, the gaps in family photos pulsed like someone just out of frame. The neighbor tapped our fake chimney and asked if I heard it. I said the breathing and he said, "No, your voice." Inside the chimney, my voice counted down from a number too high to finish. When I asked where my mother went, it said, "Down like advice or accusation." The basement stairs miscounted again. 12 down, turn, 5 up. Dust recorded 3 sets of my shoe prints and wrote them back after I wiped them away. The monitor whispered, "If he asks for the time, he wants the house." My mother's number called to say I should not be alone for my 2nd move in. "We did the first one," I said. "You always say that," she answered, and the line kept breathing after she hung up. I said I am home into the dead phone, and my porch voice answered, "I am home." The door remembered how to open and someone toured the entry like a realtor. "You have kept it," my voice said from the hallway where my mouth was not. "Kept what?" I asked. The Wednesday, it said. Afternoon turned to 2:17 without moving the sun. A version of me walked past and refused to look at me the way you ignore a mirror that will not agree. He touched the wall and found the keys again and arranged them with reverent theft. What happens if I leave? I asked. You already did, he said, and stepped through the kitchen wall like a very old book closing. Outside, the neighbor watered a garden that drank at the same rate and never said enough. He said one of him used to live here and asked which one I was. I said I was the one who listens, and he said he was the one who knows the siren is not a siren. It is attendance, he said. It takes roll. At whatever passes for noon, the world paused to listen for a name and called mine twice. Dogs wagged at a fixed point above the horizon as if someone up there had waved first. A box under my childhood bed labeled "Not Yours Yet" held instructions that censored themselves at the last line. We tried fire, it wrote, and the house breathed faster. We tried leaving, it wrote, and the door came with us. We tried prayer, it wrote, and left only a ring stain shaped like an ear. The porch voice asked for a glass of water, and I set the empty glass from the mirror kitchen on the threshold. The glass fogged without liquid, and a handprint bloomed on the inside of the door where my hand fits. The house inhaled until the rooms went thin, and the distance between walls forgot how to be. Open, my mother's voice said from inside my mouth, and I didn't. Somewhere the siren took roll and found more of me than I can afford. The cassette labeled "Apology" played a teacher laughing while a hallway door tested itself. The laugh began after the sound that ended it. The neighbor's dog barked at the chimney, and something inside it politely barked back. The access log stamped my name at lockdown while the camera showed my posture in red. The house inhaled again as if it wanted to see over me. I counted along because it is rude to make your host breathe alone. The story remains open because the door does. The house kept inhaling and the walls learned to wait between my sentences. Night felt longer because someone added more corners. I taped the ME label over with blank paper and woke to find the paper labeled "You." The mirror kitchen began leaving fingerprints that matched mine from years I don't remember. The door I found yesterday moved 3 inches to the left and pretended to be original. My sister dropped off a bag of clocks that refused to agree out loud. We lined them up and they all chose different 217s to be correct. At the thinnest moment, the baby monitor whispered, "Welcome back," in my mother's whisper, to somebody shorter than me. The attendant siren did not sound, but all the hair on my arm stood to listen anyway. A letter arrived from the Department of Air, asking who owns the breath in this dwelling. I filled the form with my name and the paper turned warm, as if it were embarrassed for me. The neighbor waved from his yard and his arm lagged behind him by a second. He shouted that the siren marked him present and absent in the same call. He asked if I had returned my Wednesday yet. I said I was still using it, and he said that explains the weather. In the attic, the cassette labeled "Apology" had split into thinner tape like long hair. I held it to the light and saw another sentence woven into the plastic. "Give the house the first inhale." I went downstairs to try, and the house inhaled before I could volunteer. The back door that should not exist led to a hallway of doors labeled with senses. I opened the one called hearing, and the room exhaled voices I have not yet said. I closed it and found a new smear on my sleeve that smelled like the school gym. The label on the next door read Wednesday in my own handwriting. I pushed it with 2 fingers and it swung open to a room full of calendars with no Saturdays. A teacher I never had stood behind a desk with my mother's keys on top. He smiled like a person who knows where the ending is kept. He asked me to choose a desk, and every desk already had my name scratched into the wood. I sat anyway and wrote the date down wrong, and the room nodded as if I'd passed. The teacher said, "We will be taking attendance forever today." He read out my name, and my other name, and the one my mother uses when she is tired. Each time I answered, and each time another me answered too, late by a breath. When he finished, there were more of me than chairs. The door called hearing clicked, and I heard footsteps from a hallway that does not touch my house. I stood up without standing and found myself already at the fake chimney. Inside it, the counting voice finally reached 0 and then kept going into numbers that feel like apologies. The neighbor's dog watched me and then looked slightly to my left and wagged. I told it there was nothing there, and it wagged harder with relief, not mine. My phone displayed a new contact called Future Tenants Association. Their message read, "You owe 12 hours in one breath." I asked how to pay, and the typing bubble lasted until sunset. The house inhaled and the text arrived as if blown into the screen. "We accept Wednesdays and coats." I put on the coat from 1998, and it fit like a story you think you remember. The pockets held a hotel key from a room number that equals the steps that go wrong in our basement. I followed the number down and met the turn and then the 5 that pretend to be up. At the landing, someone had chalked a faint blue oval around where a bed would be if a bed belonged there. It read breath perimeter in my sister's careful print. I stepped inside the oval and the air thickened, as if I walked into an exhale I didn't earn. The baby monitor asked, "Is he ready yet?" And another monitor answered, "Not him, the other him." I spoke, and my voice arrived from behind me wearing the same words but with worse intentions. The mirror kitchen had written on the fridge, "Do not listen to any voice that knows your waist size." I erased it, and the marker squeaked like a mouse trapped in a register. The refrigerator hummed an answer in the key of a hallway light. I opened the freezer and felt warm air on my eyes. A receipt for a second coat fluttered out, dated next week, signed by my hand. The signature was too neat and the store stamp bled through like a bruise. I decided to leave and the door followed me down the steps like an apology with hinges. Outside, the neighbor stood on the sidewalk wearing my cap that I do not own. He said he found it on my head last night when he walked me home twice. He asked if I needed him to say my name so the siren would hear it properly. I asked him to say nothing and he said nothing, and the silence repeated perfectly 3 times. The street smelled like wet pennies, and the clouds sorted themselves into letters that refused to spell me. A bus stopped with no one on it and opened its doors toward my house as if hoping to be chosen. The driver looked like my teacher and my mother and the neighbor as second self all at once and not at all. I did not get on because I am learning to starve my curiosity. The bus left without moving and became a shadow across the map on my ceiling. At home, the ME label had peeled itself off and stuck to the inside of the door camera. The camera feed showed my living room from a future that had better light. A version of me in that light walked to the wall and pressed his ear to where the keys once were. He nodded and wrote 3 sentences I could not read, and then erased them with his sleeve. He turned to the camera and lifted his hand, palm out, not a threat, just attendance. The feed cut to the kitchen that is not mine, where the glass of water finally learned to sweat. A child, S voice asked if it could drink yet, and my mother, in S voice said, only when he stops listening. The list on the fridge changed itself to add door to mouth. I went to the bathroom mirror to check my teeth and found keys where my molars should be. I closed my mouth and the keys clicked like a lock choosing to be. I opened my mouth and 2 small calendar pages fell into the sink, both Wednesdays. The drain accepted one and refused the other until I said my name wrong. The house inhaled and the mirror fogged and words wrote themselves backward across the glass. They said, "Return the breath you borrowed." I wiped the message and the towel smelled like gym floor and my future. The neighbor knocked softly and asked, "Which one of you is ready to be let in?" I asked which one of him was asking and he smiled like a loan officer. He said, "I brought your receipt," and handed me my own handwriting listing a debt I can't remember owing. He pointed at the chalk oval in the basement and said, "Stand there at noon." I told him we do not have noon, and he nodded like I had passed another test I didn't study for. He said the siren will make one for you if it has to. He left by walking backward until he became history. I stood at the top of the basement stairs and the house inhaled with the hunger of a place that has learned my shape. I stood at the top of the basement stairs and the noon that doesn't exist arrived anyway. The siren made a space in time that felt like a mouth opening. Chalk dust lifted from the oval and circled me like gnats that knew my middle name. I stepped down and the stairs counted wrong with more confidence than before. The house inhaled until the banister felt like an artery. My teeth clicked, and the keys inside them answered back with tiny doors opening. The baby monitor said begin, and I didn't know which of me it meant. I whispered not yet, and my whisper came from behind my knees. The air thickened into something that remembered being water. Every room in the house shifted 1 inch closer to me and called it hospitality. The wall where Mother's keys appeared warmed like a forehead learning a fever. I touched it, and my hand came back labeled guest in my own handwriting. The coat from 1998 tightened as if I had just told a lie in it. A calendar page floated down the stairwell and stuck to my chin. Wednesday again. The mirror kitchen blinked and appeared at the bottom landing where it never belonged. Its clock held 12 wak like a secret it enjoyed keeping. The glass of water sweated without help and left a ring shaped like the siren. A child cleared its throat in the ceiling and said, "I can wait longer than you." The neighbor stood in the oval's doorway and watched without standing anywhere at all. He said attendance requires a signature, and my arm wrote my name by itself on the air. The ink stayed floating and turned into a door with hinges made of breath. I opened it with the 3rd key and heard the sound of my steps from a hallway I had not walked yet. Inside was a corridor labeled by senses, but someone had misspelled mine. I tried sight and it showed me correctly except for the part where my eyes didn't belong to me. I tried taste, and the pennies finally learned to be rain. I tried balance, and the floor decided to be a wall and then forgave me. I tried memory and found my mother taking roll with the teacher I never had. They called my tired name and my other name and the one the house uses when it's hungry. All of me answered, and none of us sounded relieved. The teacher asked, "Who brought the breath?" and every mouth in the room pointed at me. I told them I borrowed it from the house, and the house inhaled, as if to agree. The baby monitor said, "We accept returns before exhale." I asked how to return something the house won't let go of. The neighbor took off my cap I do not own and put it on the chalk oval like a crown. He said, "Trade your Wednesday for the breath, and keep the coat as change." I said I needed Wednesday for weather, and he said, "That explains the heat." A bus pulled into the basement without moving and opened its doors toward my chest. The driver wore everyone's face that has ever said my name without blinking. He stamped my wrist with a time that doesn't fit any of our clocks. He said, "Last stop," and the bus became a shadow across my ceiling map again. The house inhaled, and the railing sighed my name in the voice of a room I don't enter. Upstairs, the family photos turned to profile and listened to the basement like a radio. In one frame, my reflection practiced an apology to no one present. The ME label reappeared on the inside of my lower lip and the U label on my tongue. When I spoke, the word borrowed its own echo and refused to give it back. The mirror wrote, "Return the breath you rehearsed," and then fogged me out. The door camera showed my living room an hour from now with better light and worse shadows. Future me pressed his ear to the key wall and nodded as if hearing rain that knows my schedule. He wrote 3 sentences, blurred them with his sleeve, and mouthed, "Open when you are ready." I mouthed never, and my lungs opened anyway. The siren began without sound, and my skin answered in handwriting. Lines formed across my forearms that read, "Do not follow the siren and also follow the siren." My hands argued and both won. The chalk oval narrowed until my feet had to agree with each other. The baby monitor counted down from a number that apologized with every digit. At 0, it kept counting and named the numbers after rooms. The fake chimney hummed like a throat clearing its bricks. Inside it, the counting voice admitted it had been a lullaby the whole time. The neighbor's dog barked exactly where I was and wagged like I'd finally arrived. I told the house I would leave, and the door followed me into my mouth. It sat where the words should be and practiced hinges on my tongue. I tried to swallow and heard a handle turn behind my teeth. The coat pockets filled with receipts from days that had not happened but felt legitimate. Each receipt listed, breath, 1 unit, paid in Wednesdays. Each total matched the number of steps that pretend to be up. The ceiling map peeled itself down and draped over my shoulders like a hood. It placed my street across my eyes, and another street where a blindfold would be honest. The monitor whispered, "He's here," and I asked which he, and it said whichever you answered to. The glass on the landing finally spilled itself and soaked the chalk oval into a lake. Ripples moved outward until they met a wall and remembered they were lines again. The teacher I never had stood at the water's edge and read out my attendance. I said present, and my other voices said present, and the house counted us and came up with a debt. The Department of Air texted, "We have received your Wednesday and will credit your next inhale." I asked for a receipt, and my palm warmed until the numbers printed backward. I held it up to the mirror and watched the totals become a door. The door opened onto my mouth and I walked in without being invited. The room inside smelled like gym floor and new keys, and the pause before 217. There was a chair shaped like the corner we used to hide in at school when the hallway learned our names. I sat, and the chair wrote my name on itself, wrong on purpose. I corrected it, and the correction turned into another Wednesday. The house inhaled like thunder, choosing to be whisper. The neighbor appeared in the doorway that is not a door, and offered me my cap I do not own. He placed it on my head the way a siren places noon on a quiet town. He said, "You may go when it exhales." I asked, "When will that be?" He smiled like a clock that has learned mercy and said it has never happened. I nodded, and my breath nodded with me, and stayed. Upstairs, the photos faced forward again and pretended not to have listened. The mirror kitchen arranged a second glass and wrote his and mine under them in dry condensation. A child giggled in the ceiling and asked if it could drink now. My mother's voice said, "Only when he stops listening," and I realized I was the only one listening anymore. The siren softened into a counting I could hide inside. I tried not to, and failed politely. The house inhaled once more and fit me better than before. The door inside my mouth waited with its ear against me. I said I am home, and 3 versions of me answered, early, on time, and late. The house smiled in studs and pipes and drywall, and held its breath to hear which one I would be.